Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and I want to tell you something touching. Just before I spoke, the technical director of this program said, "Have a good show." You got to admit that's moving. By the way, talking about that, and then I'm going to get into something very heavy here. One more light thing. I love language, as many of you know. How did the saying "break a leg" develop? Why is that a wonderful thing? Break a leg. And he's looking it up. Good. So you don't know, and that was your area. You know, movies and theater?
Yeah, but nobody says that for movies. It's a theater thing.
It's a theater thing?
Yeah.
No, I've been told that before speeches. All right, Dennis, break a leg. And anyway, I love that stuff. My friends, I was on a Zoom call with about 10 folks, supporters of PragerU, and it was a cigar call. And it was all men, and they were from all over the country. And I asked them about their lives. I love asking people about their lives. And I now do something, not now, I've done it, well, I've done it periodically, now I do it all the time. I ask people that I meet who are conservative, what's your batting average with your kids? And they all know exactly what I'm asking. Let's say they have 3 kids, so are you batting 1,000? Are you batting 666, 333, 0? In terms of their values. And there's no way to predict. Some kind, wonderful, traditional people have kids who have gone left, not even liberal, just left. And there's no way to predict. So I did this yesterday, asked the people on the Zoom chat with me. And one gentleman, I don't remember what city he was from. I wish I did, actually. And I know who would remember. Jason would remember at PragerU, if you want to ask. I am curious what city. Just doesn't matter, but I'm curious. Anyway, so he's open. He was open, and I might add, everyone I ask is open. I've never gotten, oh, Dennis, I'd rather not talk about it. Never. And this man opened up in front of 9 others or 10 others, not just me. With his name, he wasn't anonymous. And he mentioned that his daughter and son-in-law have made it a condition of seeing the grandchildren only if he does not talk about his beliefs, his conservative beliefs. So, first, I'm curious if you have anything analogous about not being allowed to see your grandchildren because of your views. 1-8-Prager-777-243-7776. While you're calling, I'd like to note something, because I always, when judging something, I always put the shoe on the other foot, to use an old cliche. And I think, let us say I had parents who were communists. David Horowitz had parents who were communists. The famous writer David Horowitz. His parents were actual communists. So it's not inconceivable that you could have that. Or even pro-communist, certainly more common. Would I not allow them to see my children, their grandchildren, under the condition that the only way they could is if they never espoused their views? And I can't imagine doing that. Can you?
Sounds weird to me.
It sounds weird to you. So let's say my parents, may they rest in peace. Let's say they, and of course I have children. So let's say they were communists. I laugh because they weren't communists. My father actually hated communism and used to debate communists in the 1930s when he was a kid. He was born in 1918, so he would have been a teenager in the 30s. And he said and when he went to college, he would debate communists. But anyway, let's say they were. So I would say to my kids, look, you love Grandma and Grandpa, or in my case, they were called Baba and Papa. You love Baba and Papa. I love Baba and Papa. They have some strange views. And that's it. So this man had the audacity, I presume, to vote for Donald Trump. I assume that was the sin. You can't see the grandchildren if you mention that. So there are many things to consider in such a thing. The obvious is just the meanness, the sheer meanness, depriving a parent of seeing grandchildren. I can't. It's so mean that it takes your breath away. There's another thing, though. It's the insecurity they have of their own views. If you're secure in your views, why would you deprive your parents of the chance to see the grandchildren? Think about it. I am secure in my views, so if my parents were atheist, anti-religious communists, they would see my children. Because I would have the security of knowing, first of all, I have them 95% of the time. What percent of the time do your children see their grandparents? 5%? If my views can't prevail in the other 95%, they are views held by an insecure person. So there's a combination here of staggering weakness of commitment to their left-wing beliefs and sheer meanness, not to mention not taking the commandment, honor your father and mother, seriously. But that would mean nothing to them because they don't believe in the Ten Commandments. I might add, while you're calling in, a fascinating little piece of data, or datum for the Latin pompous, or those pompous in Latin. That would be more precise. And that is that of all the videos I have made for PragerU, and I'll just say I've made 40 out of the 500, a little under 10%, right? It doesn't matter how many, but it's a lot. The most reviled were the Ten Commandments videos. People made videos to mock the Ten Commandments videos. They went to the expense and time to do so. Now, isn't that amazing? Mock the Ten Commandments, the legal basis of Western civilization, the greatest 10 principles ever set down. And believe me, one that really bugs them is honor your father and mother. Mm-hmm. You're not happy with your father and mother for whatever reason, and of course, the odds are that your psychotherapist agreed with you that you shouldn't speak to them. The damage that most psychotherapists do is profound. Some therapists are wonderful. The operative word is some. Anyway, do you have an issue of seeing your grandchildren because of your views? Do you know someone who does? 1-8-PRAGER 776-877-243 776. Hello, Julie.
Hello.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Folks, I'm talking to my friend Jenna Ellis, and I apologize, but the conversation has become substantive. Let's go back. What is the moral basis of our Constitution? That's the title of your book.
Yes.
It is really vital that people understand this. Can you make that case in short order?
Yeah, so our Declaration of Independence gives us the worldview statement that our founders unanimously recognized that when governments are abridging and infringing upon our rights that are God-given, then we appeal to the highest source of moral law, which is God himself. He is the personification of truth. And they said unanimously in the Declaration that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They went on to say that governments are instituted among men only to protect and preserve those rights. And so they then gave the mandate to the Constitutional Convention. With the Articles of Confederation were not working. The Constitutional Convention derived how can we best implement a system of government whose mandate is to protect and preserve our rights that are God-given, because our rights do not come from government, they come from God. It's the government's job to protect and preserve those rights. That's why we have the First Amendment, and all of our Bill of Rights is actually a Bill of Protections. Congress, in case you weren't clear that you have a limited role, these are the things and the rights that are God-given that governments most frequently infringe on. So like what we're doing right now, our First Amendment, speaking together about truth, that's freedom of speech, freedom of association, free exercise of religion, those are not given by the government. It is obligated by the Constitution that our government protects those rights.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be your fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah. Beat a little bit.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
The Wall Street Journal editorial. Politicians in Washington renege on their bipartisan promises all the time. But what are they to make of a deal in which one side admits it's pulling a bait and switch from the start? That was the astonishing news Thursday as President Biden and Speaker Nancy Pelosi endorsed a bipartisan Senate infrastructure deal, even as they said the price of their support is getting the rest of their agenda too. There's the picture if you're watching on our YouTube channel. 2 hours later, he said he wouldn't sign the infrastructure bill unless the Senate also passes the other $3 trillion or more he has proposed in tax increases and multiple new entitlement programs. The Journal adds most politicians at least wait a decent interval to pull a double cross, but with Mrs. Pelosi and Mr. Biden are trying to prevent a revolt on the left. So they are now holding a bipartisan deal hostage to the left's demand. That is political blackmail aimed at Democrats like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, who are part of the bipartisan Senate Gang of 10. Unless they sign on to all of the progressive tax and spend agenda, they won't get their bipartisan deal, and Mr. Biden and progressives will blame them for the failure. I think Mitch McConnell should say, no mas, we are not doing this, unless and until we get a commitment that Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden signed that this is it.
Hi, everybody. This is the Dennis Prager I Am Human show. And the reason I said that was, so you just heard about this professor at Clemson who gives this great course on John Adams. We do teach what isn't taught. How many graduates of college can tell you anything about John Adams, whom he considers the greatest of the founders? And there's a case to be made for John Adams. Anyway, yesterday when I interviewed him, I'd never met him, but of course I watched the video. And so I told him, I think you're a really good-looking guy. I'm sure he was shocked. But I don't know why people are afraid of being fully human. And I, thank God, am not. Anyway, I just thought about that because of the bumper you just heard, the billboard, as they say in radio language. The topic that I've raised was caused by something that happened yesterday, and that is, I was on a Zoom call with about 10 men who were supporters of PragerU, and we spoke for a little over an hour. And one of the men mentioned that he can only see his grandchildren on the condition he never speaks his values. He's conservative, and his child's on the left. So I'm commenting on that and how I just can't imagine a reciprocal arrangement. Parents are on the left, the conservative son does not allow them to say what they think if they come to see the grandchildren. All right, Timothy in Huntington Beach, California. Hi.
Good morning, Dennis. Thank you once again, as everyone tells you, for what the great thing that you do. God bless you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. He has
So,
blessed
Dennis,
me.
my situation, I just got in the car and I heard you talking about this, and it was so timely for me because just a few weeks back, my son, who's my oldest son, wonderful man in so many ways, and we raised him in a Christian home, Christian values and so forth, and just been a great guy all along. But just recently, with the whole issue of the pandemic and the vaccine and so forth, we have differing ideas about that, and his wife particularly has different ideas about that. And so they were going to let us have the kids for a whole week, which is unheard of. We haven't done that for 10 years, but finally, because I kind of talked about that enough in the past, I wish that we'd had the kids, because they always go with the other grandparents. They finally relented and said that we could have them for a week while they did a thing, just kind of husband and wife thing away for about a week. So at any rate, the night before they were going to do that, we had a conversation about the vaccine, and my daughter-in-law said, we looked at the science and stuff like that. So we looked at all the science and said, yeah. And my son interrupted and said, Dad, don't go there. It's a very sensitive issue for everybody here over here. And I said, well, okay, son, but it is sensitive for everybody. You got to be careful, wise and everything, And so, so then I found an article that was a number of doctors that spoke differently of the vaccine than the mainstream media does, and I sent that to him, and he shared it with his wife, and I sent it to her as well. I did a double text on that. And anyway, so he wrote me back 2 days later and said, Dad, we have wrestled with this for 2 days, and he said, with all due respect, we're not going to bring the kids down. You're not going to have the kids this time. And he said, I love you. And I wrote back and said, I love you. I hate the devil. And but that's where that stood. And I want to tell you, you talked about some psychotherapists being good, and teaching people to honor their parents. I'm a psychotherapist, and I counsel from a Christian worldview and from a biblical worldview, and I'm very big on that. And at the same time, I'm not legalistic about it. I'm not saying my son has to think, feel, and behave exactly like I do. I just know that he understands that to some degree. But in this area, he compromised it. And then one other thing I'd say about that is that I've counseled a number of people over the year, particularly young men in his demographic, who have married women who do not share the faith as completely as they do. And shortly after being married and having kids, the wife institutes a we're not going to see your parents anymore policy. So it's not just my son, and I don't know the exact dynamics for my son. Maybe someday Lord willing, we'll talk about it. But I've seen that as a common phenomenon. So I don't know what's going on, if it's some kind of subliminal message through the culture or whatever, but I do know there's been an increasing number. I've been doing this for 40 years now. and I've never seen it until the last 10, 15 years. But I've seen these young women come in and say, we are no longer going to take our kids over to your parents.
Right, exactly. I've talked about that for all of my career, and it's just gotten worse. And it is, I think, disproportionately daughters and daughters-in-law. And my heart breaks for the parents. This, in this case, it was his vaccine view. What? So, you say to your kids, Dad has issues with the vaccine. Have a great week there. Right?
Why would it even come up with
What?
the kids?
No, it doesn't. You're right. Why does it come up with the kids? But let's say it did. You know, the kids, Mom said that you have problems with the vaccine, Grandpa. So Grandpa says, yes, I do. So what happens? Kid has PTSD? Oh, my God. These stories. Okay, Lily in Silver Lake, California. Hello, Lily.
Good morning, Dennis. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Well, my daughter and her husband are planning to have a baby. And I was recently told that I am not to discuss history, politics of any kind, and especially the Cuban history. I came to the United States when I was 2 years old in 1969. My parents, I'm an only child, I have no siblings. My parents inculcated in me how horrible communism is and how it destroys society. Well, unbeknownst to me, my daughter, who's 30 years old, has traveled 7 times to Cuba in the last few years under the guise of getting back to her roots. She was born here, of course, and I told her, what roots? It's communism. That's not our history. That's not where we came from. And doesn't care, doesn't matter. And then recently, as I was waiting for you to come on, I remembered that about a month ago, she told me that she's going to have me sign a contract. And I have to agree to not discuss this with her baby, or she will sue me for emotional distress.
Ladies and gentlemen, we return to Earth in a moment. Did you hear that? You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Surprise! Sharon and you what?
Things just happened.
My girlfriend and my best friend.
You got 30 days to grow up, son.
Nathan Hanning, it is good to have you home.
Nona, it's Nathan.
Well, you don't mind my giving her your room, do you?
Really though, thanks for thinking of me for this position.
I thought about you first. Come on, growing up, I had a huge crush on you.
There are things that we all need to change about ourselves, but we can't blame God because He helps us change.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Mind Amelius, is the deep state real?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I sat in the room with it, and the scary thing is, and this is the thing that I'm always harping about, which is like I feel like we know the careers are going to be deep state, right? We know
these are the non-political appointees, the
which
career
is 99% of
bureaucrats.
The building. Yeah, and the thing that I was shocked about, I talked about this the other day, is that I'd get in the room with only political appointees, and I'd be like, okay, we're amongst friends, right? How are we going to get this done? How are we going to make sure we execute the White House's agenda here? Da da da. And they would look at you like you had three heads, and they'd be like, oh no, we're going to have to figure out a way to tap down their expectations because we can't go to NATO and tell them to pay their fair share.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
218 out with him. Headed for the house. He's got a hostage.
You believe in God, Chip? Why does a kid die and drug dealer get off scot-free?
The only answer to that is there isn't a God.
You have a choice. You can either let the darkness overtake you, or you can be a bearer of the light.
So just think of it as calling for backup.
Officer down, officer down. You're the one God's called to be a shepherd.
Keeper, do you know who I am?
You are the author?
I am.
I don't know you.
Keeper, it's your son.
Hurry it up. Time is short.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
They're not journalists, and they're really in the business of personal destruction.
That's right. Look, there are definitely a set of reporters in the press corps, and I could probably count them on one hand, maybe two, who are good reporters. And I've had one of them came up and, in a hushed tone said to me on the tarmac, I come from the old school of journalism, and kind of recognize that it has changed for the worse. And then you have people, and you're right to call them activists, like Caitlin Collins, like Jim Acosta, who are activists. And I said that much from the podium. I said, Caitlin said to me, hey, why didn't you call on me? And I yelled back, I don't call an activist, because at a certain point, we've got to call out their activism, not engage in that kind of activism, because it's destructive when you are shouted down by a Playboy reporter in the back of the room at the end of each briefing. And where are the other reporters?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and the subject was prompted by one of the participants in a Zoom session I had with PragerU supporters yesterday, people online, just 10 of them, and all over the country. One of them mentioned, because I ask people about their children all the time, that his daughter, I think it was, not allow him to see the grandchildren unless he promises not to talk about his conservative views. So that's prompted this topic here. All right, Dave in Houston, Texas. Hello.
Dennis.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for taking my call. I've been a long-time listener.
Thank you.
First-time caller, so I'm a little nervous.
It's okay. It's very normal.
I have a son in California with my two grandkids, both males. They refuse to let me see him. I have another son in Michigan with a granddaughter who also refuses to let me see them. I think it's based on I don't talk politics with them, but he knows my political views. And it could be a collective reasoning through a divorce. of some reason, or my political views, but they don't return our calls. They don't accept our calls.
Who is our? Who is our?
Myself and my wife.
Are you the parents of these children? The two of you? Are these stepchildren to your wife, or are they the children?
They're stepchildren to my wife. They're my blood grandchildren.
Right. So you mentioned divorce. Is that a factor in their alienation?
I think so. The ex-wife has spread unrelentless rumors about me and my ex-wife,
when did that start?
It started about 10 years ago when they were younger. And
how old were they?
I didn't have the opportunity to defend myself, or the divorce was a part of infidelity on my ex-wife's part. But anyway, my present wife has nothing to do with my relationship with my grandchildren, and they just totally cut me off and cut my wife off.
What is the reason that they have given?
They don't, and that's what's so frustrating. I've reached out to them. I've honored their birthdays. I've honored their Christmas holidays, and I'm their blood grandfather, and I don't get any. And I listen to you a lot, Dennis, and thank God I do. Honor thy mother and father. They don't get it. They were raised in a Christian family. They were raised in a good home, and when they became adults and had grandkids, it's like they've lost all semblance of manners, respect.
Right.
And I just don't get it. I don't get it anymore.
Yes, I know. I feel for you. God, I feel for you. I've said that this pandemic bothers me more than COVID. Mm-hmm. The pandemic of adult children not speaking to a parent and often not depriving them of any relationship with the grandchildren. You gotta be pretty mean. Just mean. And the amazing thing is the ability of mean people to think they're wonderful. It is why I remember when the self-esteem movement began, and it was misnamed, and I said it then. It should have been the unearned self-esteem movement. Self-esteem that's earned is fine. And the trivial example of it, but nevertheless an example, is giving trophies to kids for playing. Participation trophies, not for winning, for breathing. That's what we have today. He is not alone. You have no idea, folks. I almost sound a little eccentric in this. I admit it. On my bucket list in life is to talk to this man's children. Mm-hmm. All right, my friends. ReliefFactor.com is the website to order Relief Factor. But I also advise you to go there to read what people experienced after taking this sort of miracle, can't say drug. I mean, I'm allowed to say it. I don't mean it's illegal, but it's an over-the-counter safe supplement. That is sort of a miracle, I think. If you have any muscle or joint pain, they tell you in 3 weeks you'll know if it works. They give you a 3-week price of $20 at ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384.
This is Hugh Hewitt for townhall.com. Sometime next year, the Supreme Court will decide whether to continue to find the right to abortion in the Constitution or give up on its deeply misguided half-century-long effort to do so. The court will have before it the case of Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization and the constitutionality of a 2018 Mississippi law that banned abortions after the first 15 weeks of pregnancy. The court will also be deciding on whether or not to uphold a poor decision made at the intellectual low ebb of its post-war era. The court made law at Roe v. Wade, and Justice Blackmun's opinion was simply awful in its reasoning. In fact, I would argue that 1973 was the point of origin of the culture wars, because in Roe, the court seized territory reserved for the state legislatures. Will the court let us have peace at the cost of admitting that its ambition to rule was the real spark for the fires long burning? Wisdom, in the express language of the Constitution, counsels it to quit the field. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
All right, now let's move to the so-called bipartisan deal. This is two parts, Eliana. Substantively, it's not a deal. 2 hours later, the president and Nancy Pelosi said whatever they'd agreed to with the bipartisan group of senators wasn't going to pass absent another $1 trillion+ in spending and tax hikes, which means there's no deal. But secondly, Mitch McConnell will not let that get through. No one should have reported that as a bipartisan deal. And I talked about this with John Allen. It's just absolute terrible reporting to call it a bipartisan breakthrough when 2 hours later the president reneges. Agree or disagree?
I think that's right, although it wasn't clear that I was surprised by Biden's move. I wasn't sure that he would land where Pelosi was, and I was surprised to see him say that. I think having spoken to a handful of Republican senators about this, the Republican strategy was to back a more narrow infrastructure bill that contains the popular items and then sort of leave Democrats holding the bag on this really expensive bill. I think it's something they believe they could campaign against Democrats against in the midterm elections. And what happened was essentially the Democrats saying they're putting the goodie bag deal first. And I think there are a lot of things that could happen. That first bill could go nowhere if Manchin and Sinema don't support it. Or that bill could pass and the quote-unquote bipartisan deal on infrastructure, I think it's unlikely to pass after that.
Otherwise, you know, the Republicans are the dumbest group of senators I've ever seen if they agree to this thing. And I mean dumb, and Mitch McConnell is anything but dumb.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the
I'd like to tell you a story apropos of the subject, not being allowed to see your grandchildren because of your views. And this was prompted by the last call. What was it where the daughter is pregnant and wants the mother or father to sign a contract not to cause emotional distress in the grandchild? Was that right? Because of their views. This is the world of the well-educated. I told you, I believe it literally. College makes you stupid. It's not, I don't throw out lines. I throw out convictions. Some people are not made stupid by college. They are the minority. They either had great values, didn't pay attention, or were drunk most of the 4 years. The only positive thing I could think about college drinking is you might not get as stupid and indoctrinated as the sober. So, emotional distress, first of all. Here's a helpful little tip. There is no parent on earth who has not caused a child emotional distress. that parent doesn't exist, will never exist. And there is no human, basically, that will not cause other humans emotional distress. That is, so what? The biggest question is, well, there are many. Why? Maybe it's your problem and not theirs. And two, how much? That matters. Anyway, listen to this. So here's a family story I don't think I ever told on the radio, and I told just about everything. When I had a difficult grandmother, may she rest in peace. My father's mother was a difficult woman. And one time I was on the phone with her. I remember where I was seated on the living room couch, which had plastic around it. I never actually sat on that couch. I sat on the plastic that protected it, which is hard in summer because you wear shorts and your skin sticks to it. But anyway, I was on with my grandmother, and for whatever reason, I don't recall the reason or the context, but she was, as I said, a difficult woman. She goes, "Your mother," that is her daughter-in-law, her son's wife, my mother, "your mother is a Hitler," with a Yiddish accent. As I said, I was about 9 or 10, and I remember my reaction. This is a riot. Grandma is calling Mommy Hitler. I thought it was a riot. I was not caused emotional distress. We were sort of prepared for it. Grandma is a tough woman. And I put my hand over the telephone on the bottom part into which you speak, and yelled out, "Hey, Dad, Grandma thinks Mommy's Hitler." And it became a family joke. And Grandma was over next Sunday, like every other Sunday, for a very elaborate meal that my mother made every Sunday for the grandparents. And every Sunday, the same thing would happen. After this 4 or 5 course meal that my mother made, my grandmother would praise the cantaloupe. Hilda, my mother's name was Hilda. Excellent cantaloupe. The only thing my mother didn't make. So we didn't have emotional distress. We thought it was a riot. That's what you tell your kids. If you think your parents have goofy views, say, I think grandpa has goofy views, but it doesn't matter. We respect our grandparents. My parents it wouldn't have occurred to them that because she called Mommy Hitler, we're not going to have her over for any more or see the grandchildren. The thought would have been laughable to my parents. That's the way it is. Matt in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. I know the Poconos well. I went to camp there. What city in the Poconos? I know the area.
I'm in Hamlin.
Hamlin?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I knew Tannersville, Effort.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not far from there.
All right.
Well, thanks for taking my call, Dennis. I got to say, since I moved up here 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, I found you by accident, and it's been really a gift.
Thank you. A good accident. See, there are good accidents. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm formerly from New York, so I had to get away from there.
Correct.
But anyway, the reason why I'm calling was similar to another call you just had a couple calls back. We had an incident with my. I care for my mother right now up here. It's kind of why I came up here was to get away from New York because of the stress and this and that. But anyway, my 2 brothers. I'm the youngest of 7, and 2 of my brothers are on the left. With everything that's going on, my mother doesn't want to get the vaccine. She's 79 years old. she's, very spiritual. She's got, as we like to call it, she's got a direct line to God. And, she's
All
with
right,
it,
so
and
tell me
she
their
knows-
reaction. So she doesn't want to get the vaccine, and the two brothers, what have they done?
Yeah, no, they won't let her see her grandkids. Which is
Wait,
7
because
of her.
because she won't get the vaccine. So are they afraid medically, or are they afraid ideologically?
Both, actually.
Unbelievable. Grandma's going to kill the kids because she's not vaccinated. There's no question these two brothers went to college and probably graduate school.
I love that that's your day.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
After an hour, I just raised my hand, and there's me, the guy with the accent, saying, "Ladies, gentlemen, can I remind you what the president said yesterday about destroying the caliphate when he was in Warsaw? Can I remind you what the president said about Russia's threat to Europe?" And it's like, who do these people think they are? They just think that they don't matter, and the will of the people and who they elected is irrelevant, Amanda.
No, it's the exact same thing that I saw. The best line that I got is when I got into it with somebody, because I was like, well, I was trying to speak bureaucrat, and I was like, okay, fine. Like, I got it. You need orders to come from the exact person that you report to, and I got to play the little math game and the whole thing. I was like, we did that. Why aren't you doing this? Why are you not following this chain of command that you so worship? And they were like, well, I don't work for the secretary. I don't work for the president. I work for the State Department. And I was like, what is this?
Hang on. Somebody actually said that to you?
Yes, they fully said that in all totally earnestly. And I was like, what do you think this is? Like a sovereign state that's just on these like 6 city blocks? Like, you think that this is like its own nation and it's determined by the will of like bureaucrat X? It was the craziest thing. And I was like, the fact that they even were willing, because usually they pretend to kiss the behind of the secretary in phrase, but they don't. And it was just amazing because they were just out with it. I mean, this stuff happened all the time. I mean, you know that. It was and like I said, the one that really pissed me off were the fact that there was political appointees that did the same thing, that they thought their job was to clean up after the embarrassment of the campaign promises or the things the president said.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. What an hour. Can't see the grandkids because you're a conservative. Susan, Tarzana, California. Hello.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi.
I mentioned to your screener that what I'm listening to is tragic and it just breaks my heart. However, right now it's the pandemic that women who want to control men are using. So after the pandemic, there will always be something that women, they want to take control of the situation, the home life, everything. Unfortunately, when the men are dating and getting to know the women, I believe the women show only what they want the men to see of them.
Oh, let me... Susan, I'm laughing because I have talked about this on a number of occasions with regard to happiness, how the unhappy act happy while dating. And then within about a week of the wedding, they no longer put on the act, and you realize you've married an unhappy human being. But I wonder if people could sue for false advertising after dating. Susan, you're a kindred spirit. I thank you. And let's see. Another woman has a view on that. We're now living under the tyranny of women's feelings. Well, it's the age of feelings. Feelings are very powerful in women. That is correct. Each sex has to battle parts of their nature. This is one of the longest themes of my life. We teach boys to control their natures, their sexual predatory nature, and their tendency towards physical violence. Well, it's redundant, toward violence. So the question is, what do you teach your daughter to control? And the answer is very little. In the age of stupidity ushered in by radical secularism, we think girls are naturally terrific. But they are no more naturally terrific than boys, just that their non-terrificness comes out in different ways. Anyway, the board is loaded with people who can't see grandkids because of their views. As I said, my bucket list is to interview someone who won't let their parents see their grandchildren. If you want to come on, I'd love it. Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Rovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not one mistake.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I had studied Marxist history, beginning with Marx and Engels' Communist Manifesto from 1848. And when I first studied that and saw in section 1 of the manifesto what you can recognize as what's called the oppressor versus oppressed narrative of human history, a whole bunch of stuff that was taking place in our country began to become exceptionally clear to me. And I began to piece together a lot of the what I'll call militant impulse that was manifesting in society as time went on. And there's a victimhood ideology. There's constantly an effort by some individuals who have an agenda to pit groups of people against one another as victims or oppressed groups and oppressor groups. And we've seen very clearly over the past calendar year who the oppressor group is labeled to be and who the oppressed groups are labeled to be. And right now, under the auspices of diversity and inclusion training, as well as critical race theory and other narratives of American history that have been parading about throughout the country and showing up in our education system, all of those narratives seek to divide the American people by pitting people against one another into racial groups.
Yeah, it's
the white versus the black. It
used to be class, division by class. Now it's division by race, by skin color. We've only begun to scratch the surface. We're going to go deep dive on what's happening inside the U.S. military and why this man took the courageous step of writing the book Irresistible Revolution. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
When I go to some of these liberal towns, I'm met with disgust or protest. It was actually incredible walking the streets of Burlington. We had people coming up saying, I listened to your podcast. Now, this is literally the town where Bernie Sanders was mayor. That's Burlington, Vermont. So we went to Vermont, and over the weekend, some people actually stopped me when I was speaking at that church, and they said, Charlie, I listened to your podcast on slow motion secession. I encourage all of you to check out the podcast we did on slow motion secession. We got a lot of feedback from it. And they said, Charlie, I'm already there. These are people that live in Vermont. They say, I want to go to a place that can disconnect from this government. They do not represent me.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Get back or I'll shoot you. No one's left inside for the pastor and his two daughters.
If you run, I'll shoot your family. Nobody cares whether I live or die. It's bad.
I'm not going to stand around and be a part of it anymore. Give me the gun. No.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
But what's happened in the media, the narrative, the media cover for the Democrat double cross, is they're out there saying, oh, the Republicans always knew there would be a reconciliation. And I keep saying, no, no, no. The Republicans knew that they were going to pass infrastructure. Then you would try to pass reconciliation, but they knew it wouldn't pass. They were never joined at the hip. Am I right?
You're 100% right. It's without any question. This is how we see these socialist ideas start being socialized in their public forum. It is wrong. It is not consistent with any deal that was ever on the table, as far as I know. And we had this conversation just last Thursday amongst the Republican senators. This was a non-starter for everyone that was in the room.
And I believe that members of your caucus who I talked to were counting on Manchin, Sinema, Hassan, and a few others to sink the reconciliation deal, and that this was a way to jump over that opposition by linking the two. Am I right again?
Don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you, Hugh. I would say that there's no doubt that there's been a bipartisan coalition interested in reducing the infrastructure package. The question is, can the Democrats stand the heat in the kitchen? If they can, then they stand against their party. If they don't, they succumb to the pressure. I don't want reconciliation to be used on a $2 trillion mammoth package that has less to do with traditional infrastructure and more to do with a utopian society that can't exist because you can't perfect man and you can't expect people in Washington to spend your money better than you would.
I also expect reconciliation will do away with much of the 2017 tax bill, including stepped-up basis.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
about these complex business partners.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dennis Prager Show. Heather McDonald is well known to you, and if she's not, she should be. Everything she writes is important. She writes for one of my two favorite journals. I have a lot of wonderful journals in my life, but my two favorite are City Journal and the Claremont Review of Books. She's a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, which publishes the City Journal, author of a number of books, including The Diversity Delusion, How Race and Gender Pandering Corrupt the University and Undermine Our Culture. The latest thing she's written is in the Wall Street Journal. The National Institute of Health's diversity obsession subverts science. Heather, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having me on, Dennis. It's always an honor.
That's very kind. Give me a musical thought before we get into your subject. Anything of interest? Heather and I share a profound love of classical music.
Well, sadly, the field is being rocked by the same Black Lives Matter activism as hitting every other aspect of Western civilization. I have a mega piece coming out imminently in the summer issue of City Journal tracking the fallacious idea that classical music is racist, both in its essence and in its current practices. The idea that musicians who audition for orchestras behind a screen so nobody can see their identity, whether it's their sex or their race or anything else, or their connection to the conductor, that very practice of blind auditions is now being accused of racism, that somehow it's racist to hire without race. So anyway, the field is at risk, and none of its major leaders have stood up and defended it against this poisonous identity politics that is being poured into it, not just by the activists, by the classical music press as well.
Well, I'm glad I asked the question. So your piece is coming out shortly.
Yep. I will send it to you.
Well, I will read it. I'd love you to send it to me, but I read it anyway. I have a subscription, a paid subscription, I might add. The leading leading music critic of the New York Times, Anthony Tomasini, actually came out against blind auditions.
Right, absolutely. It's a logical impossibility, but logic doesn't matter today. As we know, logic is simply a white male construct. It just cannot be the case that not knowing somebody's race results in racism. But that's the situation, and this is not just classical music, of course, Dennis. Every other institution, whether museums, we see the National Archives now, the National Museum of Natural History in New York City, they are all self-destroying from the inside because their leaders are cowards. Their leaders have been entrusted with preserving the greatness of Western civilization, and they are silent before this phony narrative. It breaks my heart. My heart breaks every day watching what's going on.
That's exactly right, and so does mine. Your article is about the subversion of science, so go ahead.
Well, the idea that race and sex are relevant to scientific research has now completely infected the federal science bureaucracies and most academic departments. And most recent iteration of this, the National Institutes of Health, which is the premier funder of basic research in biology, in medicine, has declared that its neuroscience initiative, this is a cutting-edge, incredibly sophisticated initiative that involves nanotechnology, high-tech physics, to try and image what goes on in the brain, to try and understand the electrical circuitry, that from here on out, if you want to get a grant to work on this brain initiative whose possible yield is cures for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, depression, autism, you have to show that your team is going to have a suitable smattering of underrepresented populations, whether minorities, whether blacks, Hispanics, poor people, single mothers. You have to draw from so-called community-based organizations, which usually means like a homeless shelter or something. If you're community-based, you're some nonprofit, eating off of the government dime. And your score on your plan for enhancing diversity will affect whether you get funded or not. Now, the big fallacy of the race hustle here and in every other environment, every other corporation or in criminal law, is that it ignores what's in the pipeline. And to say, as the director of the NIH does, Francis Collins, that because blacks are 13%, 13% of the population, but they only make up about 2% of people receiving grants from the NIH, that must mean that the NIH and other science generally suffers from structural racism, is completely unscientific. It is an utter lie. The problem is that there is a huge academic skills gap. We know from research, black students do homework at a quarter the rate of Asians and half the rate of whites. Their math SATs, which are a big indicator of whether you're going to end up as a scientist later on, are utterly rock bottom. The average math SAT on an 800-point scale for blacks is 454, which is a standard deviation at least below that of Asians and whites. Very few blacks even reach the score that will predict that they get at least a C+ in their freshman year science or math courses. And if you can't muster even a C+ in your freshman year pre-calculus, you're not going to end up working on the NIH's neurology initiative. And then when you look at the PhDs that are graduating in science, here's some numbers, Dennis. In 2019, there were 20 blacks nationwide who received a doctorate in a neuroscience field. That's less than 2% of all such degrees awarded in the neurosciences. So when this Francis Collins, this head of the NIH, who has gone around saying he's not even going to participate in science conferences unless they have a lot of females and minorities on the panels, because otherwise it's a mantle, which is completely taboo now. When he complains that NIH only awards about 2% of its grants to blacks, that's completely in line with the rate at which blacks receive PhDs in the STEM fields. It is not racism. In electrical engineering, which is a feeder into nanotechnology, which is now, as I say, at the cutting edge of understanding the brain, there were of all PhDs in the field, there were 18 black PhDs in electrical engineering last year. That's 1% of the total. It's not racism. It is simply the reality.
There's nothing one can say to all of that, except to ask you what is the obvious. I think the question is obvious. I hope the answer is not, but it might be as well. What will this do to science?
It will absolutely crush it under the weight of mediocrity. It is mathematically proven that when you introduce extraneous criteria into a selection process, so it is extraneous. If you want to work on a cure for Alzheimer's, whether you're female, black, Hispanic, gay, whatever, is extraneous. The only thing that matters is your scientific expertise. But if you say we have to start selecting for these extraneous criteria, you will lower your pool of employees. It is inevitable. And so we are going to weight our scientific enterprise down with dead weight. Guess who is not? China. China, in the field of science at least, is ruthlessly meritocratic. It doesn't give a damn if a lab is all male. If it's all female, who cares? The only thing that matters is it filled with our best.
That's right. Heather McDonald is great. It's as simple as that. We'll be back.
Streaming on Salem Now.
218 out with him. Headed for the house. He's got a hostage.
You believe in God, Chip. Why does a kid die? Drug dealer get off scot-free.
Well, the only answer to that is there isn't a God.
You have a choice. You can either let the darkness overtake you, or you can be a bearer of the light.
So just think of it as calling for backup.
Officer down, officer.
You're the one God's called to be a shepherd.
Keeper, do you know who I am?
You are the author?
I am.
I don't know you.
Keeper, it's your son.
Hurry it up! Time is short.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Burka.
What is your message to those who think this isn't a big deal or who feel cowed and intimidated? What do you say to them?
Anytime you say something like what I'm about to say, I'm sure it can be abused and misused, so I'll be very careful in how I say it. I've never read Hitler's Mein Kampf, but I've picked it up recently in the past week because I'm interested in learning everything I can about history. After spending just a day with his Mein Kampf, the spirit and essence of his race hatred that shows up in that book, a set of two books, is very similar to what I'm seeing show up in How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
School board chair is a woman named Brenda Sheridan, and she's not backing down at all. In fact, indeed, they're doubling down on the school board. She said tonight, this is how she responded apparently on Tuesday. She said, quote, "Tonight, the Loudoun County School Board meeting was interrupted by those who wish to use the public comment period to disrupt our work and disrespect each other." She said, "Dog whistle politics will not delay our work. We will not back down from fighting for the rights of our students and continuing our focus on equity." Two-part
Okay, Mike,
Go ahead.
let me ask you this. What is their work? Because for the past year and a half, it took us fighting to get our students to even get back into a hybrid schedule. They couldn't even focus on our education. What is their work exactly?
Yeah.
Their work exactly is to listen to their parents, who actually are the constituents and the voices of their children. The school board is not the voice of my child.
Well, and I'd like to also ask you about two fundamental aspects of her statement. Number one, how did you interrupt those who are using the public comment period? How did you disrupt their work, and how did you disrespect each other?
Actually, we didn't disrespect each other. Actually, we started singing the Star Spangled Banner when they got up.
Oh no! No wonder they were triggered. No wonder.
Right?
Yeah. You can't have
God
a flag.
forbid that we honor our country. God forbid we honor our flag.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
One of the lights in this dark time is Heather McDonald. We're having trouble getting her line, gentlemen. It's not connecting. Heather McDonald writes often for the Wall Street Journal. She writes for City Journal, a great paper, or I should say journal. The left's infecting of science. You realize what that means, my friends. It means more people will die because we won't have the best minds working on cures for illnesses. Because we'll be too busy choosing people based on sex, race, sexual orientation, who knows what else. What? We don't have a single transgender working on Alzheimer's? Get rid of the non-transgender so we can hire a transgender. I don't know what animates this Francis Collins, the director of NIH. I had known about him. I think I even had him on the show many years ago.
Yeah.
I did, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what's happened to him. Back to Heather McDonald. What has happened to Francis Collins? Do you have any theory?
What has happened to Mr. Collins?
Yes.
What do you mean? He's powerful as ever. I mean, he's
right. But I remember him from many, many years ago arguing. He became known, or at least to me, as a scientist who believed in God.
Right.
And I would not have predicted that he'd become a woke anti-science fanatic, which is what he is.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm not gonna comment on any connection or predilection one way or another with the religion comment, but that's absolutely right. But he's been this way for a long time, I think, and he's earlier this year he issued his own personal apology about systemic racism in STEM, and now he's delivering. But he's not unique. The National Science Foundation is just as bad. This was one of the tragic things. There was only so much Trump could do to try to rein in the bureaucracy.
Right.
He did not touch the pervasiveness of identity politics throughout the science bureaucracies. They were allowed to continue with this destructive, creativity-destroying mania for substituting the trivialities of race and sex for actual scientific expertise.
Given the testimony of the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which I'm sure you're aware of just this past week, and the rot at the top of the military, the rot at the top of the sciences, is there anything left that is not been hurt or even destroyed by the left? Is there anything left?
That's a question I ask myself constantly, Dennis. And in particular, I ask, what are the red state perpetuating institutions that will continue to give some ballast to this country? It's exactly that. The military has been destroyed by feminism. The very idea, if any military Pentagon chief agrees to put females in combat units, he should be removed immediately. That is inimical to combat readiness. But we've embraced that. So the military's gone, and we've seen, as you say, all of the critical, the race mongering that's going on, the race hatred that's going on. Public schools, if you send your kids to public school, I don't care if you're in Arkansas, in the Bible Belt, you are going to have teachers there that are peddling identity politics. Sports, they've caved. So I don't really know. How do we ensure that the next generation has some people in it that are still understand the value of reason. And so the need is on. It's urgent to try to create alternative institutions. Donors should be, for God's sakes, no listener to your show should give a dime to his alma mater. Save your money, and let's hope that some entrepreneur comes up with a way to make homeschooling more feasible or create schools that are dedicated to a non-angry, grateful teaching of Western civilization, because we need to create alternatives to preserve. You know, it's a lifeboat. It's like the medieval monasteries trying to preserve Aristotle, you know, for the future, because otherwise it's all coming down. It is, every institution is going to be felled by the concept of disparate impact. Every institution, whether it's in law enforcement or academia, will have a disparate impact on blacks because of behavioral disparities, the cultural disparities, and that hurts blacks most of all because there are many law-abiding, high-achieving blacks, but they get destroyed when we tear down meritocracy, when we tear down expectations of lawful behavior. So we need to create alternative institutions.
That's exactly correct. There are times when I hear everything I feel just stated beautifully by somebody else. That is exactly what you did. Alternate institutions. I had a column a few weeks ago begging people to just withdraw from the school system.
Yep.
There is no real alternative. By the way, if they did that, that would be a shockwave.
Yep, absolutely.
That would be, that's what I wrote. Yeah, the reason we think similarly is because we're both rational. I mean, that's the irony. You can't have rational thought and come up with what they're doing. How do you produce? How is excellence furthered by identity politics?
I want to give the benefit of the doubt to the other side because they would say the same about us. They would say, how can you be so blind to the facts before your face of systemic racism? So, I want to try to understand, but I frankly can't get there because I can look at the numbers, say, to bring it back to the NIH. I can look at the numbers of PhDs that are graduating the STEM field. It is mathematically impossible that every STEM department in this country, in Harvard or Cal State University, Riverside, San Bernardino, can have 13% black STEM faculty based on the numbers. That is rationality, and yet they deny it. So I don't know what we have in common. And of course, we're not even given the opportunity any longer to put our facts out there. That's the killer, is that we can't even have debate any longer. Forget whether we believe that facts can change minds that are closed. But now, to even bring up facts is said to be hate speech and destructive of the very existence of females and underrepresented minorities. Again, alternative institutions.
Yes. Well, that's why we have Talk Radio and PragerU, as you well know. Heather has some wonderful videos, by the way, at PragerU. I'm going to ask her about New York City and crime when we come back. I'm Dennis Prager.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
So critical race theory actually is indoctrinating our children to tell them that if you are white, you are an oppressor. You are innately designed to be racist. And if you are Black, you are oppressed. In other words, you will never have the opportunities that the white person has. And the little boy or the little girl that's sitting beside you in your classroom is the reason why. This is why it's such a divisive, and in itself, it's completely racist.
Well, it is. I mean, that's what I love about people who scream racism are often guilty of the racism themselves. I mean, it's the quintessential projection. How can you condemn children who've done nothing wrong? How do you make victims and oppressors out of kids in elementary school?
Well, this is what fired me up. This is what got me initially so upset, is that, you know, I watch my 10-year-old son play football with little boys from every race, from every walk of life, every religion. And I watch them as they help each other up on the field when they get knocked down. I watch them give each other high fives. I watch them do chest bumps, right? They are not thinking, oh, you're Black, so I can't touch you, or, oh, you're less than me. Guess what? They've got Blacks, whites, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jews. They're all playing together, and they're all respecting each other, and they're all caring for each other. Why would you put such a divisive theory or ideology into a school system?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Surprise.
Sharon and you what?
Things just happened.
My girlfriend and my best friend.
You got 30 days to grow up, son.
Nathan Hannigan, it is good to have you home.
Nona, it's Nathan.
Well, you don't mind my giving her your room, do you?
Really though, thanks for thinking of me for this position.
I thought about you first. Come on, growing up, I had a huge crush on you.
There are things that we all need to change about ourselves, but we can't blame God because He helps us change.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
218 out with him. Headed for the house. He's got a hostage.
You believe in God, Chip. Why does a kid die and drug dealer get off scot-free?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and need to get Heather McDonald back online. And this is a woman that gets it. Why is it not obvious to any rational human being, anyone who cares about goodness? This is a combination of reason and goodness. That you choose people based on no criteria except excellence. How are we going to get cures for diseases if we choose scientists based on race and gender? Nobody has an answer to that. So it's more important to have more non-white male scientists than it is to get a cure for cancer. That's what's being said, or non-Asian for that matter. It's a very frightening thing. You know, Heather, I think about this, of course, as you know, as you do, a lot. And one of the things that is relatively unmentioned, that I know you and I feel greatly, our duty to the next generation, in any generation, is to pass on the best of what society has ever produced, so that they can benefit from the best that has been produced. But if you don't give your child Beethoven because Beethoven was white, then you are depriving your child of the best music possible.
It's tragic, and I don't know whether the just hysteria, the mania, the complete disassociation from reality, the anger that we're seeing, especially in the young generations, these employees that have got their corporate CEOs running scared, is due in part to the fact that they were not given exposure to beauty growing up. The teaching of grievance has been in the curriculum for a long time, and so they've had nothing to retreat to imaginatively, to be able to luxuriate in the beauties of pastoral poetry, or of Chopin, or of Brahms, or Haydn, and so there's nothing within their soul.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Burka.
What is your message to those who think this isn't a big deal or who feel cowed and intimidated? What do you say to them?
Anytime you say something like what I'm about to say, I'm sure it can be abused and misused, so I'll be very careful in how I say it. I've never read Hitler's Mein Kampf, but I've picked it up recently in the past week because I'm interested in learning everything I can about history. After spending just a day with his Mein Kampf, the spirit and essence of his race hatred that shows up in that book, a set of 2 books, is very similar to what I'm seeing show up in How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
School board chair is a woman named Brenda Sheridan, and she's not backing down at all. In fact, indeed, they're doubling down on the school board. She said tonight, this is how she responded apparently on Tuesday. She said, quote, "Tonight, the Loudoun County School Board meeting was interrupted by those who wish to use the public comment period to disrupt our work and disrespect each other." She said, "Dog whistle politics will not delay our work. We will not back down from fighting for the rights of our students and continuing our focus on equity." Two-part
Okay, Mike,
Go ahead.
let me ask you this. What is their work? Because for the past year and a half, it took us fighting to get our students to even get back into a hybrid schedule. They couldn't even focus on our education. What is their work exactly?
Yeah.
Their work exactly is to listen to their parents, who actually are the constituents and the voices of their children. The school board is not the voice of my child.
Well, and I'd like to also ask you about 2 fundamental aspects of her statement. Number one, how did you interrupt those who are using the public comment period? How did you disrupt their work, and how did you disrespect each other?
Actually, we didn't disrespect each other. Actually, we started singing the Star Spangled Banner when they got up.
Oh, no.
So
No
that
wonder
probably
they were
was
triggered.
offensive.
No
Right,
wonder.
right?
Yeah. You
I
can't
mean,
have
God
a flag.
forbid that we honor our country. God forbid we honor our flag.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
for delight, and were not angry. They were not rubbing kids' nose in dysfunction. Unlike now, where you always have to learn, the stories are always about oppression. No, let kids imagine a world populated by animals. So we have to preserve these works. It's our basic obligation as human beings who have inherited this civilization.
That's right. You would think. What's happening in New York on two levels? The election of mayor in the most complex electoral counting system I've ever encountered, and crime.
Well, they're related. The crime is as bad there as it is every place else. Shootings are up 70% this year after last year's nearly record-breaking increase. This week we had a Marine tourist who was shot by a stray bullet in the back in Times Square. That's the second shooting of a tourist in a month. We've had earlier this month a female tourist was socked in the face by four youth, as we say, trying to get her cell phone. A 10-year-old boy was killed in Queens this recently, a couple days ago. This is happening everywhere. We like to focus on places like New York and Chicago. It's even worse in places like Oakland or Wilmington, and it's all because of the disparate impact issue, which I brought up earlier. We are unwinding the criminal justice system. We're decriminalizing, we're de-incarcerating, all because criminal law has a disparate impact on black criminals. The issue is it has a disparate impact on criminals. Crime has a disparate impact on blacks. If you want to save black lives, you go after the criminals. But now we've decided we can't go after criminals because doing so has a disparate impact on blacks. And as a result, the city, you and I, Dennis, saw this from the start, and you were an early predictor of what coronavirus is going to do. You said it's a warm-up for big government, national emergency, climate change. New York is never going to come back. It is still a ghost town because of the shutdowns. These small businesses, which are unique to New York, they're, 1 in 3 are still shuttered. But with crime rising, nobody's going to come back. And so it is just bizarre because we know how to fix it. We fixed it in the 90s. It's very straightforward. You allow the police to be proactive. They have been handcuffed. Whether the presumptive Democratic winner, Eric Adams, assuming that this chaos will come out, and I actually hope that there will be challenges to the fraud so that we can have the Democrats going after each other with these electoral challenges. But, he did give a message of law and order. I'm not the unequivocal Eric Adams supporter that many of my conservative colleagues are, because I know too well his history within the New York Police Department, where he was a race hustler, a race monger. He continues to do so. Sadly, he was the best of the field, of a very, very bad field. I will be very happy if he sticks to his word. I will not be surprised if he ends up falling for the same disparate impact nonsense as everybody else.
Yep. Heather, bless you. I will speak to you soon. You can get any of her things on the internet. She's the author of magnificent books and contributing editor of City Journal. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Always a great, great pleasure.
Thank you. It was beautiful. I didn't expect to have her on that long. The combination of reason, fact, and passion is rare.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
This Olympic athlete who won the bronze medal in the Olympic trials turned her back as they were playing the national anthem. She said she didn't expect the national anthem to be played and felt that she was set up when they played it at the time that they played it, because they figured that she would react that way, and somehow she was manipulated into, I mean, it's convoluted. I don't understand exactly what she was saying. All I know is that they played the national anthem. She turned her back. I look at people like Colin Kaepernick, who took a knee, and I heard him give specifics about why he was protesting. And what caused him to start protesting was the killing of a black man in Oakland who had a knife, who resisted several commands to drop the knife, appeared to be coming towards an officer. He got popped. And that's what caused Colin Kaepernick to start. One of the other things Colin Kaepernick says is that a man named Mumi Abu-Jamal should be freed from prison. This is a man who stood over a Philadelphia police officer and killed him execution style. So whenever he's gotten specific, particularly the argument that the police are killing black people just because they're black, when the studies show, if anything, the police are 3 times more hesitant to pull the trigger on a black suspect than a white suspect, then he's full of it. So regarding this athlete that won the bronze the other day and turned her back at the Olympic trials as the national anthem was being played, tell me what specifically is your cause. What is it? What is it? Women make less money than men do for doing the same work? That's not true. I'm not saying that's her cause, but give it to me. What is it? What are you bitching about? What are you moaning about? What are you groaning about? What? Tell me.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Rovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not talk about disparate impacts. What the Democrats have done to blacks since the 1960s is criminal and has had a disparate impact on them. Please understand that the black family, as Tom Sowell has shown, was actually more intact. You were more likely to grow up with a mother and father if you were black in the 1930s, 1940s, I believe even, than white. And then asinine, destructive, irrational ideas came from the left, like the welfare state, the antithesis of what America stands for, which is a small state. And this gargantuan monster known as government. I'm not anti-government existing. I'm not an anarchist. Talking about the size. The size. Power corrupts, my friends. Power covers up for stupidity. Look at Gavin Newsom. This is a truly stupid man. Now, is he stupider than the average man? In some ways. But he has a lot of power. Stupid people with power is not a good thing. Have you ever heard an intelligent comment from the man? I haven't. You should hear his interview with Adam Carolla a few years ago when he was lieutenant governor. I know Adam well. Adam and I go around the country doing dialogues together, made a movie together, No Safe Spaces. And he didn't expect such an incoherent human being to be on the show. He didn't know what would happen. What Democrats have done to blacks since the 1960s, and not to mention to the country, but you want to know a lot about disparate impact? To this day, they oppose school choice for blacks. Why is that? Because, ladies and gentlemen, Democrats don't give a damn about blacks. The left doesn't give a damn about anyone except power for themselves. It's so obvious. You have to have gone to graduate school to deny it.
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Telling him about this former NBA player named Jay Williams, who congratulated the Celtics on hiring their, quote, first head coach of color, close quote. His name is Ime Udoka. He is from Nigeria, played in the NBA, and was an assistant coach and worked his way up. And Jay Williams congratulated him as the Boston Celtics, quote, first head coach of color, end of quote. Sigh. You ever heard of Bill Russell? He was the first black head coach in the NBA anywhere. Coach from 1966 to 69, won 2 titles, by the way. A guy named Tom Sanders served as a coach for the Celtics, also a black man. Casey Jones from 83 to 88 won 2 titles. Oh, M.L. Carr, 95 to 97. Doc Rivers led the Celtics to an NBA championship. So outside of Doc Rivers, M.L. Carr, Casey Jones, Tom Sanders, and Bill Russell, he's right. First black. I mean, how do you go on TV and say that? How do you do that? He is paid to cover this is his job. That's all he has to do. This is all this man has to do. And before you go on TV, you know what you're going to talk about? You discuss the subject. You get your talking points in line. He never went on Google and said, you know what? Maybe I ought to find out whether or not Boston's ever hired a black coach before I congratulate this man for being the first one.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Some lawyer hit a little girl.
The community is left in shock as former cancer patient Sharon Blackwell was struck by an oncoming vehicle.
Take this into evidence, sir. I need to call my wife.
You've been accused of texting while driving.
If we don't make an example out of this guy, the public will crucify us.
Before you take your daughter off life support, give God room to be God.
You're not guaranteed another day, but you have today.
Get back or I'll shoot you.
The ones left inside for the pastor and his 2 daughters.
If you run, I'll shoot your family. Nobody cares whether I live or die. It's bad.
I'm not gonna stand around and be a part of it anymore. Give me the gun.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Gwen Berry needs to be punished. You see, there's only 2 ways to handle insurgents like Gwen Berry. You can pander to them, and you can try to find a middle ground with them. Or you could show them that if you dare break the rules and make a ceremony that is about our fallen veterans, our service members, and the greatest nation ever to exist in the history of the world, the commonality, the ties that bind us together. If you decide to turn your back on that flag and put the shirt on your head, well, then you're off the team. You can go throw a hammer for China. You know what? You can go throw a hammer for, go pick a nation. How about Somalia? That would be a good one. Go pick a country, any country, where they do that sort of thing against America. Iran. Gwen Berry, I'm sure Iran would love to have you throw a hammer for them. You might have to dress a little bit differently to accommodate the theological, radical, Islamic theological medieval tyrants over there who believe that women should not be clothed the way you were clothed the other day. But some people are saying, well, she has a free speech right to do this. Look, freedom of speech is there for us to pursue virtue. And also, freedom of speech has its maxims. Just because you're able to do something at a certain time, is that the right time or the right place to do it as an athlete while you are being commissioned by our nation to go represent us? Of course not. And by the way, if Gwen Berry all of a sudden during that ceremony put a Make America Great Again hat on, how do you think the other side would be reacting?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
So critical race theory actually is indoctrinating our children to tell them that if you are white, you are an oppressor. You are innately designed to be racist. And if you are black, you are oppressed. In other words, you will never have the opportunities that the white person has. And the little boy or the little girl that's sitting beside you in your classroom is the reason why. This is why it's such a divisive, and in itself, it's completely racist.
Well, it is. I mean, that's what I love about people who scream racism are often guilty of the racism themselves. I mean, it's the quintessential projection. How can you condemn children who've done nothing wrong? How do you make victims and oppressors out of kids in elementary school?
Well, this is what fired me up. This is what got me initially so upset, is that, you know, I watch my 10-year-old son play football with little boys.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and I welcome you to Hour 3 of my show. As a rule, as you know, it is a rule, not as a rule. It is a rule. The left crushes everything it touches. And one of the things it has been crushing is small business, which is the backbone, not just of the American economy, but of America in socially and even morally. That is a great thing, the small business. And it seems like the people in power don't care about it. Carol Roth, former investment banker, has a very important new book, The War on Small Business, How the Government Used the Pandemic to Crush the Backbone of America. That's it. That's the word. backbone. Carol Roth, where are you?
Hi, Dennis. I am in sunny Chicago today, a place that they know a lot about crushing economic freedom.
They do. Do you live there?
I do live here. I live here in the middle of the country. I'm originally born and raised here, and I've spent time on both coasts, but my family's here, and that's where I live.
What is the mood like in Chicago today? I know in Minneapolis, to a large extent, there's a lot of depressed people.
Yeah, it's been a real challenge here in Chicago. We've had a ton of violence and a ton of just sort of people overrunning the rights of the individual, and it's actually become very dangerous in the main downtown areas with carjackings and attacks and assaults. So it's definitely not quite as vibrant as it was maybe 2 years ago.
So that's exactly what's happened, what you delineate in your book, but it is not brand new to the pandemic, the war on small business. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's the thesis. This has been going on for quite some time, the government tilting the playing field and moving us away from, true free market capitalism to them and inserting themselves into more and more cronyism. But what happened during the pandemic was so brazen, such a brazen choosing of winners and losers, of who's going to thrive and who's going to fight to survive. And it wasn't done based on data. It wasn't done based on science. It was based on political clout and connections. And what that enabled was the most historic wealth transfer that we have seen in our lifetimes. I mean, we saw 7 technology companies gain $3.4 trillion in value in 2020, while you saw hundreds of thousands of small businesses shutter forever and millions more fight to survive.
It's a very important thing. The greatest transfer of wealth in American history. Did I hear you correctly?
Correct. From Main Street to Wall Street.
Because the government picked winners and losers.
Right. Yeah, and basically are standing in the way of our economic freedom, our ability to create that wealth in our ownership. If you think about what a small business is, it's equity ownership in something that you create. The same thing with investing in the stock markets. They disrupted the risk there, and it made it much more risky to try and gain wealth in that direction. They disrupted the ability to go out and buy a house, and now you have to compete with big hedge fund managers to go buy a house. So they're disrupting all of these wealth creation opportunities, and in doing so, continually transferring that wealth from Main Street to the people who are already the wealthiest. And it was just absolutely historic, but because there were so many other things going on and the media is so focused on the sideshow, this story isn't getting enough play, and so I appreciate you giving it a platform.
I went out, in fact, and spoke at rallies for small businesses in the L.A. area that were being crushed. I'd like you to explain to me what's happened to the chambers of commerce. They're supposed to protect small businesses.
It's interesting with the chambers of commerce and also with small business itself, because small businesses are so varied and so independent. Before COVID, we had 30.2 million small businesses in this country, and a lot of those are solo businesses, and many of them are on the small side. So some of the chambers, and particularly the larger chambers that have clout, not necessarily all the chambers, but they tend to focus on the bigger business interests, and it's very analogous to what the politicians do. It's easier to get people to pay you and to kind of wrangle up a handful of big companies than it is to coordinate with all of these small independent entities. And so it's sort of a mirror of what we see in the politicians that, well, half the economy is a small business, but the other half are these 10 to 15,000 big businesses. We'll just focus on them. And I think the chamber's really mirrored that, where they've gone after not only bigger businesses, but quote unquote bigger small businesses at the end of the spectrum, because that's where they're getting their scale from, and they're really not representing the interests of the every business on Main Street.
So there's no small business group. I was stunned at the acceptance of the lockdowns crushing their businesses by restaurants, for example. I wanted massive disobedience to what wasn't even law, because they weren't passed as laws. There were mandates, or whatever term they wanted to use. And yet there was with almost no exceptions, every one of which I spoke at a rally for. I'm speaking in my area, Southern California. They all obeyed the laws that crushed their lives. Why?
This is a fantastic question. We saw some examples of disobedience. We saw in Texas, Shelley Luther, she got thrown in jail. We saw Tillis Gym in New Jersey. They racked up more than $1 million in fines. It's amazing that we didn't see not only more pushback, but also that we haven't seen more lawsuits, and perhaps those are coming. Because, again, if you're a business owner and you've got your property rights, the government can't take your property for the quote-unquote public good without due compensation. That's eminent domain. So the fact that these businesses not only were shut down but didn't receive the appropriate compensation, and by the way, it's not like the government didn't spend trillions and trillions of dollars, it's just that a tiny fraction of that went to small businesses that saw their property rights subjugated. It is amazing to me, and I keep telling small business owners, go sue, go stand up. But the fact that there was this wide compliance, and that with all the things going on, this is where the law enforcement was spending their time going and serving cease and desist letters to small business owners, is probably the biggest head scratcher that came out of the last year. I mean, my husband and I had this theoretical discussion in February about, could you even lock people down? Would anybody go for that? And we both said, yeah, probably not. And the fact that people did and went along with it, it really is a head scratcher. I mean, do you have a take on that?
I have only a conclusion, not an explanation. It was, my listeners know this, so I hope they'll forgive me for repeating. Look, you asked me a question. Here's an honest answer. In the last year and a half, I have come to a different understanding of much of my fellow Americans. I bought the belief, the land of the free and the home of the brave, and the ease with which Americans gave up freedom and the dominance of cowardice renders land of the free and home of the brave questionable. It bothers me terribly because I actually believed those words every time I heard or sang the national anthem. Something has happened to the American in the last 50 years, and I'm not shocked, but I didn't expect it. That's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that, and I guess perhaps maybe I should have expected a different outcome based on the way that we've seen people giving up freedoms so easily and not challenging so many of these unconstitutional actions and just letting them slide and letting the federal government, become this sort of Frankenstein monster. But we're at a really critical path here, and we are sliding into an area where they're conditioning people.
Yes, hold on there. I want to tell everybody about your book. Carol Roth's book is up at DennisPrager.com. We continue.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
So critical race theory actually is indoctrinating our children to tell them that if you are white, you are an oppressor. You are innately designed to be racist. And if you are black, you are oppressed. In other words, you will never have the opportunities that the white person has. And the little boy or the little girl that's sitting beside you in your classroom is the reason why. This is why it's such a divisive, and in itself, it's completely racist.
Well, it is. I mean, that's what I love about people who scream racism are often guilty of the racism themselves. I mean, this it's the quintessential projection. How can you condemn children who've done nothing wrong? How do you make victims and oppressors out of kids in elementary school?
Well, this is what fired me up. This is what got me initially so upset, is that, you know, I watch my 10-year-old son play football with little boys from every race, from every walk of life, every religion. And I watch them as they help each other up on the field when they get knocked down. I watch them give each other high fives. I watch them do chest bumps, right? They are not thinking, oh, you're black, so I can't touch you, or, oh, you're less than me. Guess what? They've got blacks, whites, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jews. They're all playing together, and they're all respecting each other, and they're all caring for each other. Why would you put such a divisive theory or ideology into a school system?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Surprise!
Sharon and you what?
Things just happened.
My girlfriend and my best friend.
You got 30 days to grow up, son.
Nathan Hanning, it is good to have you home.
Nona, it's Nathan.
Well, you don't mind my giving her your room, do you?
Really though, thanks for thinking of me for this position.
I thought about you first. Come on, growing up, I had a huge crush on you.
There are things that we all need to change about ourselves, but we can't blame God, because He helps us change.
Stream on your phone, tablet.
I will return to Carol Roth in a moment. Her book, The War on Small Business. Vital stuff, my friends. Don't give up. Don't give up. So I want to thank Andrew and Todd at Sierra Pacific Mortgage, who have been with me from the very first day of the lockdown a year and a half ago. I always wondered who these two guys were working throughout the lockdown when, I would go on the roads here in Southern California, the area known for the greatest traffic in the country, and they were empty. But Andrew and Todd we're working. So if you're considering a refi, take out money from your equity, whatever it might be, a reverse mortgage. These are the guys, andrewandtodd.com. I've met them finally, and they are wonderful people. 888-888-1172, andrewandtodd.com. Carol Roth's book is up at DennisPrager.com. The War on Small Business, How the Government Used the Pandemic to Crush the Backbone of America. I did not expect you to be a kindred spirit to the extent that you are. We kindred spirits need to band together to save this country. So right now, what is the state of small business in the United States?
Well, first, I want to thank you for your fight for economic freedom and for free market capitalism. I've been following it for a long time, so appreciate the feeling about being kindred spirits.
Right.
It is really hard for small businesses right now. So many of them have closed. Those who have fought to survive, many of them are being crushed by debt that they took on before the pandemic even began, because you remember small business owners invest in their own businesses. A lot of that is personally guaranteed. Now they have to compete with the government, who has put out enhanced unemployment benefits and other things that have kept people out of the workforce. So they're competing for labor. We have 9.3 million jobs that small businesses primarily can't fill. They're raising their wages. They are offering signing bonuses. They can't get people back to work. They've seen the supply chains completely disrupted because these genius central planners thought that you could just turn off large swaths of the economy and then flip it back on like you were power cycling a modem and there would be no disruption. So they're having a hard time with everything from raw materials to production to shipping and transportation. And then they're dealing with the inflation that's coming out of the monetary policy and some of the fiscal policy as well. So, if you weren't already a small business owner that had been shuttered, you're having a really hard time. And Alienable did a poll for June, and they found about 35% of their respondents weren't sure if they were going to be able to pay their June rent. That's very staggering.
Yes. Well, I want to end with a suggestion to my listeners and have you react to it. I've made it, but I don't think I've made it often. But I live by this. I mean, for an inexpensive item, this doesn't apply. But if you buy, for example, a camera or an air conditioner, I don't know what, anything that's above $25, let's say, just to make an arbitrary amount. I just tell people, why would you want to buy it from Amazon when you can support a small business on the internet if you want to use the internet? Does that sound like a good idea to you?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, capitalism is freedom and choice, and you're voting with your dollars. And one of the things that I've been doing, as I've been talking about the book, is suggesting that if you want to buy The War on Small Business and educate yourself about this and support small business advocacy, you can go to a website called bookshop.org. And bookshop.org will actually fulfill the book from a local small business bookseller. So instead of me complaining about how the playing field is tilted away from small businesses and then saying, go to Amazon, we've been telling people to go to bookshop.org. And I think that you supporting small businesses independently and voting with your dollars is one of the greatest things that we can do to ensure economic freedom in this country.
A young man I know, wonderful young man, conservative, he's in his early 20s, and is often at my home, and really enjoy this kid. Anyway, he is into photography, and showed me a brand new lens, which was $2,500. I know the lens. And I said, where'd you buy it? And he said, Amazon. I said, but you could have got it at the exact same price from 100 other dealers on the internet. or not to mention a local camera store. And it registered, but he didn't think about it before, and he agrees that we have to keep small businesses alive. So that's why I think this is a worthwhile suggestion.
I think it is, and it is having more awareness that you're not doing that automatic response. And so educating yourself on the plight of small business and what's happening will hopefully make that less automatic and will make you think, just 2 seconds more to go to a different website if you want to do it online, or go patronize your local business, and make sure that we preserve that half of the economy that represents decentralization and stops the centralized power that's happening.
Well, you're a delight. Carol Roth is the author of The War on Small Business, which is up at DennisPrager.com. Makes the ordering very, very simple. So, Carol, thank you so much for the interview and the book.
Thanks so much, Dennis. And again, thanks for your advocacy for economic freedom.
My pleasure, to say the least. Okay, everybody, let's take some calls here. David in Irvine, California. Hello.
Hello, Dennis.
That's right.
I've been listening to you religiously recently, but you've been using the term lockdown. That's appropriate for prisoners. It's not appropriate for school children, not appropriate for American residents.
What would you like me to use?
I find it really... Sorry?
What term would you like me to use?
Ooh, I don't stay at home. Okay, and actually that's BS, as you well know. But I find the use of the term lockdown and its common use, even by you, to be offensive because it's for prisoners. It's not for people.
People were prisoners.
Prisoners are slaves. Actually, prisoners are slaves, and they lose.
Okay, I just for the record, only because we have a few seconds, as you hear. People dying in hospitals that cannot be visited by a single friend or relative, were prisoners of a mean-spirited, irrational, medically unsound government and medical profession. The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor Pain-Free Studio.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
This Olympic athlete who won the bronze medal in the Olympic trials turned her back as they were playing the national anthem. She said she didn't expect the national anthem to be played and felt that she was being set up when they played it, at the time they played it, because they figured that she would react that way, and somehow she was manipulated into, it was convoluted. I don't understand exactly what she was saying. All I know is that they played the national anthem. She turned her back. I look at people like Colin Kaepernick, who took a knee, and I heard him give specifics about why he was protesting. And what caused him to start protesting was the killing of a black man in Oakland who had a knife, who resisted several commands to drop the knife, appeared to be coming towards an officer. He got popped. And that's what caused Colin Kaepernick to start. One of the other things Colin Kaepernick says is that a man named Mumi Abu-Jamal should be freed from prison. This is a man who stood over a Philadelphia police officer and killed him execution style. So whenever he's gotten specific, particularly the argument that the police are killing black people just because they're black, when the studies show, if anything, the police are 3 times more hesitant to pull the trigger on a black suspect than a white suspect, then he's full of it. So regarding this athlete that won the bronze the other day and turned her back at the Olympic trials as the national anthem was being played, tell me what specifically is your cause. What is it? What is it? Women make less money than men do for doing the same work? That's not true. I'm not saying that's her cause, but give it to me. What is it? What are you bitching about? What are you moaning about? What are you groaning about? What? Tell me.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Grovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not one mistake.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I had studied Marxist history, beginning with Marx and Engels' Communist Manifesto from 1848. And when I first studied that and saw in section 1 of the manifesto what you can recognize as what's called the oppressor versus oppressed narrative of human history, a whole bunch of stuff that was taking place in our country began to become exceptionally clear to me. And I began to piece together a lot of the what I'll call militant impulse that was manifesting in society as time went on. And there's a victimhood ideology. There's constant
Wow. Hey, by the way, since we are doing music for this moment, Sean, what was the name of the song I asked you to pick up? Was it Tonight Could Be the Night? Don't get it. I want to get their lyrics up first. My friends, I listen periodically to 1950s music. So Tonight Could Be the Night, right? Yeah, tonight, okay, could be the night lyrics. Because I don't make out lyrics perfectly when I hear a song, but I made it out enough. I want you to get an idea of what was heard in the terrible 50s. It's just 61. It's till 65 counts as 50s culturally. Anyway, if you knew today that kids were hearing a song titled Guy Singing About a Girl, Tonight Could Be the Night, 99.99999% of you would think tonight's the night I will get to be, I'm going to use it because it's a family show, intimate with her, correct? We will make it, right? That's what everyone, it wouldn't even be an issue. Tonight, in fact, when I first heard the song, I thought, oh, well, I know what that's about. Tonight Could Be the Night. This is from 1961. This is what they were singing about Tonight Could Be the Night. Hold it. Did you all pick up the lyrics? Got the chills, don't you? Tonight could be the night to hear her say, darling, I do. All right, I do to what? Okay, good. Keep going.
And tonight could be the night
Get that ring around your finger.
Okay, hold it. Okay, that answers your question. Tonight could be the night to get the ring around your finger. All right, just in case you want more examples, I give you these examples about the culture periodically. What is very interesting and very, very disconcerting is that you could be raised with such a rich culture as kids were in the 50s, and you produce this a-hole generation of baby boomers. Most narcissistic generation and destructive generation in American history. That's my generation. A lot of wonderful people in this generation too, but as a generation, it is uniquely ruined this country. The chaos you see is the product of my generation. God. To be raised on a song like that, tonight is the night to put the ring on her finger, and then have contempt for marriage, and then transfer that contempt to the next generation. Yeah. Okay. We should keep that. It's just a song to remind people of the steep degradation of this culture. Ken in Brandon, Mississippi. Hello, Ken.
Hello, Dennis. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Great. I have an adult son who's 32 years old, and he is liberal on some issues and somewhat conservative on fiscal issues and things like that. And I've been trying to educate him over the years, and he's just unwilling to make the crossover to being a conservative. And we had a discussion a couple of days ago. He's home visiting, and he asked me to define conservatism. And I gave him all the sort of ideas that I embrace, which is smaller government and less government overreach and rugged individualism and upholding our Constitution.
I have an answer. Stay on with me, and I want to hear the rest of your answer. This is the key question. The key question. NerveRenew.com. I ask you to go there because a lot of people have what I have. I've had it half my life, and that is numbness, tingling in an extremity. In my case, feet. It's built into me. Both feet have that. It's a nerve condition you're usually born with. Anyway, I got inserts that worked about 10 years ago, and then I started taking Nerve Renew. Figured why not? Read about it on the internet, threw away the inserts after about 10 months. Give it a try. NerveRenew.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
So critical race theory actually is indoctrinating our children to tell them that if you are white, you are an oppressor. You are innately designed to be racist. And if you are Black, you are oppressed. In other words, you will never have the opportunities that the white person has. And the little boy or the little girl that's sitting beside you in your classroom is the reason why. This is why it's such a divisive, and in itself, it's completely racist.
Well, it is. I mean, that's what I love about people who scream racism are often guilty of the racism themselves. I mean, it's the quintessential projection. How can you condemn children who've done nothing wrong? How do you make victims and oppressors out of kids in elementary school?
Well, this is what fired me up. This is what got me initially so upset, is that, you know, I watch my 10-year-old son play football with little boys from every race, from every walk of life, every religion. And I watch them as they help each other up on the field when they get knocked down. I watch them give each other high fives. I watch them do chest bumps, right? They are not thinking, oh, you're Black, so I can't touch you, or, oh, you're less than me. Guess what? They've got Blacks, whites, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jews. They're all playing together, and they're all respecting each other, and they're all caring for each other. Why would you put such a divisive theory or ideology into a school system?
Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. I'm going back to Mississippi, and Ken in Brandon, Mississippi. So you have a son. I'm just reviewing this for my sake and the sake of the listeners. You have a son. How old is he?
32.
22?
32.
32. Sorry. Okay. He's 32, and he tends conservative on fiscal issues and on the left on social issues. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. By the way, in every instance in my life, and I have tremendous amount of experience in this because of the nature of my work, everyone who says that they are fiscal on they're conservative on fiscal issues and liberal on social issues votes left. I have never met one who said that, who voted Republican. So the social always trumps the fiscal for whatever reason. Anyway, he asked you, so Dad, what is conservatism? Which is, I will give my answer afterwards, but so far you gave the answer, which is excellent, that of limited government and rugged individualism, right? Did I get it correctly?
Yes, and upholding the Constitution.
Right. Okay. So you are 100% right, and it will not be effective. So I'll tell you what I think is effective because it is so clear and so in your face. What I call the American Trinity. I want to conserve. Conservatism to me is conserving the Central American value system, which is contained not in anything I made up, but on every coin and paper bill in America, as long as they will be using cash, and they're going to try not to because they want to monitor every penny you spend. And that is e pluribus unum, in God we trust, and liberty. So, my son, I would say that's conservatism. Liberty, e pluribus unum, meaning from many one, we don't give a damn where you're from, we don't give a damn about your ethnicity or race, we are all Americans. And third, in God we trust. The system doesn't work if you don't think that rights come from God, because if you think rights come from man, then man can take away those rights. That's my answer. How do you like that answer, Ken?
I'll try that. Are you still there?
Yep. How do you like the answer? I put you on hold.
Oh, I like the answer a lot. I'm going to present that to him and see how that takes.
Good. And let me know. Send me an email. There is a video I did on it for PragerU. It takes 5 minutes to watch. The American Trinity. I have devoted my life to clarifying values. That's one way of summarizing what I've done with my life and what I continue to do. The inability, and I don't blame them, the inability of the World War II generation to articulate what America stands for, rather than into it, is why the baby boomers ruined the country. What you see today, the tearing down of Lincoln statue, renaming schools named after George Washington, saying that Beethoven isn't great, he's only celebrated because he's white, all comes from the baby boomer generation, which spelled America with a K. I lived through it. I saw it. The riots at Columbia, these narcissistic, spoiled brats from Scarsdale tearing apart Columbia, which deserved to be torn apart, frankly, but I didn't support it. Columbia stinks. It stank when I was there, but it's much worse today, and it's phony. They're against Columbus Day, but they won't change the name Columbia. It's all phony. The whole thing's a moral fraud. But we have to be able to explain our value system. Otherwise, we don't get anywhere. That's why I, PragerU, are effective. We know how to explain. That's it. How to explain is everything. That's why my Bible commentary is widely read. I explain. It's a lot of work. A lot of work. By the way, help yourself, because this is life-changing, my Bible commentary, even if you're an atheist. It's called The Rational Bible. The third of the 5 volumes is coming out in 2 months. You can pre-order it. Deuteronomy at Amazon. Even Costco will be selling it. One of my prouder achievements in life is that Costco ordered 25,000 copies of the Deuteronomy commentary. Now, you got to admit, that is one bloody achievement. Will it hold up for Leviticus? That is the great question. But even Deuteronomy, most people never heard of it, and almost nobody could spell it, and they ordered 25,000 copies. Because I explain. Everything is explain. In Deuteronomy, ironically, there is actually a commandment that God gives Moses. Explain these statutes well. The word for explain in ancient Hebrew also is inscribe, but I tend toward the explanation of explanation. If you don't explain, you lose adherence.
The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor Pain-Free Studio. now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Gwen Berry needs to be punished. You see, there's only two ways to handle insurgents like Gwen Berry. You can pander to them, and you can try to find a middle ground with them. Or you could show them that if you dare break the rules and make a ceremony that is about our fallen veterans, our service members, and the greatest nation ever to exist in the history of the world, the commonality, the ties that bind us together, if you decide to turn your back on that flag and put the shirt on your head, well, then you're off the team. You can go throw a hammer for China. You know what? You can go throw a hammer for, go pick a nation. How about Somalia? That would be a good one. Go pick a country, any country, where they do that sort of thing against America. Iran. Gwen Berry, I'm sure Iran would love to have you throw a hammer for them. You might have to dress a little bit differently to accommodate the theological, radical, Islamic theological medieval tyrants over there who believe that women should not be clothed the way you were clothed the other day. But some people are saying, well, she has a free speech right to do this. Look, freedom of speech is there for us to pursue virtue. And also, freedom of speech has its maxims. Just because you're able to do something at a certain time, is that the right time or the right place to do it as an athlete while you are being commissioned by our nation to go represent us? Of course not. And by the way, if Gwen Berry all of a sudden during that ceremony put a Make America Great Again hat on, how do you think the other side would be reacting?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV.
Hey everybody, Dennis Prager here. I got a lot of great calls here tomorrow. What is today? Today's Thursday already? Oh, wow. First day of July, Thursday. I can't believe you realize 2021 is half over. Third hour tomorrow is open lines, and I invite you. Bill in South Carolina, the affordable homeschooling will be very helpful. Got a call on hydroxychloroquine, small business, honoring your parents, another woman who can't see her grandchildren because of politics. Well, all right, so give me calls tomorrow. I want to end by reading you something from USA Today, which is truly, well, it's a handout. It's a left-wing handout. But I read left-wing handouts more than I read right-wing handouts. So listen to this. A big, gigantic, really gigantic article on the transgender and the bills that they can't compete in female sports. Of course, they're against that bill. Those bills. That's not the point. Listen to this. The American Medical Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics have filed a brief supporting a lawsuit that seeks to stop Idaho's law. American Medical Association. Every institution has been wrecked by the left. The American Medical Association believes that it is medically necessary and that it is moral and that it is fair for biological men to compete against biological women. That is the position of the American Medical Association. No, that's the position of LGBTQ. But you couldn't find any differences between their positions. The AMA might as well be the ACLU. So when I'm told the AMA has announced something, it has no moral or medical clout with me. Every institution is rotting. A lot of terrific Americans, however, are still around. We just have to construct different and better associations. It can be done. I truly believe that. I'm working on it. See you tomorrow.